Good day, everybody, from me, Andre Viljoen, bringing you this week's Gateway News God Stories of Africa. Just over a month ago, the South African government announced that it was suspending its bid to push through a controversial bill to decriminalize prostitution. What does this development mean, and what next? Gateway News discussed these questions with Dr. Marcel van der Walt, Director of the Research Institute at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in Washington, D.C., who has dealt extensively with sex trafficking and sexual offenses committed by sex buyers in South Africa's sex trade from both a law enforcement and research perspective. Prostitution is a great injustice against women, and fully decriminalizing it or regulating it in a way that tells men they can pay to do whatever they please with women would create more demand for prostituted persons and increase sex trafficking, he says. While the government's decision not to go ahead with the bill now is commendable, the government is committed to reworking its poorly drafted bill, and the next topic of conversation will likely be the regulation of the sex industry. This topic may only rear its head next year or beyond, but the stakes remain high, and if the outcome is a law that does not hold sex buyers accountable, a new wave of intergenerational trauma will be unleashed on women, children, and communities. But van der Walt says there is much ground for hope. The sleeping giant, a well-informed and active civil society, has begun to arise. In the past 5 months, in response to an aggressive bid by the government to get its bill approved, many people, including those in the anti-trafficking movement, have acquired much research-based knowledge from around the world about the dire consequences of decriminalizing all parties in the sex trade, and have made counterfactual submissions to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Van der Walt says he is also reliably informed that there was an upswell of resistance to the bill by people in government. He says that it is vital that civil society, especially the religious community, uses the breathing space time as a result of the suspension of the bill to mobilize opposition to passing of a law that will expose prostituted women and children to more exploitation and abuse and lead to an increase in trafficking. The multi-layered threats posed by state-approved sex buying, pimping, and brothel keeping must be raised on every possible platform. Both rural and urban communities will bear the brunt, as will several government departments, which will be confronted by the dizzying reality: prostitution never exists in a clinical vacuum. It seamlessly overlaps with sex trafficking, gender-based violence, organized crime, drug trafficking, child endangerment, contact crimes, community complaints, and public health harms, says van der Walt. You can read more about this critical issue in our article at gatewaynews.co.za, including van der Walt's creative thoughts on how to make sex buyers pay for services to exit women from prostitution. It's time for a paradigm shift on the whole debate. We should be far more excited to be part of the fight for people not to go into prostitution and fighting for their rights to be in it. In a landmark ruling last Friday, the United States Supreme Court decided in favor of a Christian web designer who objected to a state law compelling her to create custom websites for same-sex weddings. The court ruled in a 6-3 opinion the state of Colorado would violate the free speech rights of Lori Smith by requiring her to design a website for a ceremony conflicts with her conscience. Smith had made it clear she serves customers who identify as LGBTQ, but objects to being compelled to use her talents to promote something that conflicts with her faith. The decision provided an important legal win for the rights of Christians and other faith adherents in a series of cases involving the intersection of religious freedom and same-sex marriage. In the majority opinion, Associate Justice Neil Gorsuch said the state seeks to force an individual to speak in ways that align with its views, but defy her conscience about a matter of major significance. The decision of the highest court in the U.S. broke along ideological political lines. Nominees by Republican presidents made up the majority, while justices nominated by Democrats were in dissent. Alliance Defending Freedom, which represented Smith in the case, praised the decision as a win for all Americans. Supporters of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights decried the decision. The number of major media platforms broadly distorted the ruling as being an attack on LGBTQ rights rather than a defense of freedom of speech for Americans of all persuasions. In entertainment news, Sound of Freedom, a film by Christian company Angel Studios, was the #1 movie at the box office in the United States on Independence Day, the 4th of July. The film, led by Passion of the Christ star Jim Caviezel, brought in over $14 million in ticket sales on its opening day, beating out its closest competitor, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which brought in $11.69 million. The film reportedly earned nearly all of its budget back on its opening day. Sound of Freedom, which has an 8.6 rating on the IMDb, tells the true story of Tim Ballard, a former federal agent who embarks on a life-altering mission to rescue children from the clutches of sex traffickers. Gateway News is waiting for a response from Angel Studios on when and how the movie can be viewed outside the US. Presumably, it will become available on the Angel. Thank you for joining us today on God's Stories of Africa. Please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to make sure you miss none of our content. Gateway News is taking a 1-week sabbatical break, so our next God Stories of Africa will be posted on the 21st of July. God bless you abundantly until we meet again.